All right, let's see. All right, so we got audio. Amazing. All right, today we got sent a deal in Maricopa County at 23654 West Chambers Street in Buckeye, Arizona, 85326. All right, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit just so everyone can see on Instagram. This is a 8.3% entry fee in subto deal in Buckeye, 4 bedroom, 2 baths, ARV $360,000. Entry fee is $30,000 plus closing costs plus transaction um, coordination fees. So that includes the cash seller and the assignment. Great. Interest rate for the FHA loan is 4.75%. Now, this is interesting. What you guys would want to know is that this is an FHA loan. Okay. Two things you want to think about. Usually for FHA loans, sometimes the seller might have used some sort of homeowners assistance or first-time buyers assistance or down payment assistance in order to achieve such a low down payment loan. So these are typically very common in properties that might have been bought within the last year or two, but because of how high interest rates have gone, they are now in a zero equity or even a negative equity position because the home prices might have fallen a little bit because of how interest rates are. And if they were to sell on the open market, they might have to write a check to close on a deal because they have to kind of pay out all the fees, etc. So one of the members in Sub2, Kevin Cho, he talks a lot about the no equity list, and this is usually a very common scenario for those types of properties. Now, for this property, there's a total debt of $361,000. PITI is 2173.80. There's HOA for $50 a month. Now, interesting. They're saying the long-term rental rate is $2,000 to $2,100 a month. And the Section 8 fair market rent is 2890. Interesting. That's a pretty big gap there. There's no balloon, close of escrow December 15, 2023. All right. Well, let's keep going. Glad I was able to kind of get on here. It's 11:40 on East Coast time. So no excuses. We're going to keep on going. So what do we do when we look at every single property? Well, the first thing I did was I try to figure out what the property looks like. And I was able to find this on realtor.com. And it looks like they are trying to rent out this property because it says it's available for rent. And they're saying we accept Section 8 vouchers. So good enough. All right, let's take a look at some of the photos if we can. Looks like carpet work. I'm assuming the whole house needs to get painted. I would probably just replace the carpet because I don't know how old the carpet is. The bathroom looks fine. Garage is okay. All right, let's look at the photos for what we see from. Looks like the photos are exactly what we saw on realtor.com. Let's see if we see any better photos in the Dropbox. Okay. This is the master bedroom. Honestly, if it were me, I would just tear up the entire carpet and just replace it with LVP to kind of just make everything a little bit more sturdy. Okay. It's not in terrible shape. It just looks like it's a pure cosmetic rehab for this property. All right. So we remember all these photos and remember the condition of the property. The next thing we want to do is get the fair market rents and verify what it is. So you can go to here and for brevity purposes, you can look at the underwriting from last night to go through the process about how do we actually get here. But if you Google HUD FMR, HUD space FMR, click on the first link at the top. Then you click on the link at the bottom of the page where it says small air FMRs. Click on that and click on the red button where it says FY 2024 FMRs. It'll bring you to a website where you are then allowed to select the state and a county for what you're trying to do. Once you get here, it will display a page where you have the zip code on the far left side. And again, if you're on Instagram, you probably won't be able to see the full screen version, but if you are following on YouTube, youtube.com/@Kent_HE, you'll be able to see the full version. And then you're able to figure out by zip code, by bedroom count, what is the fair market rent, which stands for FMR. And you're able to see that right here, the FMR for a 3-bedroom is $26.70, and the 4-bedroom fair market rent is $3030. All right, you can kind of see right at the top, just so you guys can see it, 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom. All right, well, now that you have the fair market rents, the next thing you want to do is go to get the market rents. Okay, what I then did was I went to affordablehousing.com. I went to the market rent estimator. I plugged in the address. I put in the bedroom count. And now I'm able to see that for 25 units within a 0.34 mile radius, the average market rent is $2,049. Now, why is this important? You saw how big of a gap it is to the 4-bedroom rent, which is almost $3,000. And then you also saw that they indicated the same thing. They said the LTR was $2,200. Great. I see that here because I see that the home is the average market rent affordable housing now is $2,049. So that LTR estimate was correct. Now, the problem is that when you have such a big gap, that made me dig into the research a little bit more. So what I then did was I simply Googled Maricopa County Buckeye Housing Authority Payment Standards 2023 because I'm trying to figure out like, hey, why is there such a big gap? What are people really paying for it? Well, with a simple Google search, I was able to find out what the payment standards are. Now, usually we only look at the market rents and we look at the FMR because usually there is a rent reasonableness test that says, hey, just because the fair market rent or the ceiling rent is $3,000, the housing authority is unlikely going to allow you to rent it out at the ceiling if for such a big gap. They're going to be like, you can't just charge $3,000 to this family just because they're voucher holders if the market rent is only $2,050. Makes sense, right? They do not want voucher holders to get a much higher rent simply because they are voucher holders for obvious reasons. So what I then did was I found a payment standard. Now, this is where you have to figure out what your payment standards are for a 4-bedroom property in the Maricopa County Housing Authority. Excuse me. So when your payment standard is 2445, you have to understand that this is the maximum the housing authority will pay for your rental. But this also includes utilities and rental tax, etc. So if you think about it, what we saw before was $2,049 for market rent. Here, including utilities, is $2,445, which means they're paying you extra $400 for utilities, but very likely your utilities will probably cost more than $400. And this is why typically a lot of landlords might not include utilities because you're not incentivizing your residents to be cautious with your utilities. Like if they leave the water running and there is an active drip, they might not report it to you because they're not responsible for the bill. And if they ever do that, or they turn on the air conditioner, which gets very hot in Arizona, right? They leave the air conditioner on all the time and they open the windows. That's a lot of electricity and there's a lot of water. So just be very, very careful if you do include utilities. So don't look at this number and like, whoa, payment standard is $2,445. Well, yeah, I want the extra $400. Well, that extra $400 compared to the market rent, you probably lose it right back in utilities and then some. So just think about that and make sure you're able to get those numbers and truly verify what's out there. All right. So now that we've gone through the market rent, the FMR, and the payment standards, I then want to go and quickly look at, well, let me just see whether or not this is a neighborhood that seems safe and what does it look like. Looks like it's pretty suburban. This doesn't look like it's in a bad area or whatever because it looks like just a lot of subdivision with all single family homes, not near any big areas. Let's see what's around. yeah, it's kind of out there. So not going to be a huge gathering of population. So the next thing I want to do is go to tophap.com and I want to punch in the address and I want to go to the neighborhood section because I want to verify the crime index score. And right here, if you click on neighborhood, there you go. Yeah, Ramin, you're watching. Hey, good evening to you, man. So, boom, now that you're able to see that, one, I just had validation from someone that's investing in the local area, says it's super safe. I also have the crime score that verifies at 50 right now, 50. 50. That's what it's showing on topout.com. So you know it's a solid area. Everything has confirmed what I know so far. All right. So now we are going to start punching in the numbers into Excel. Let me stop sharing for 1 second. Again, sorry guys, I'm traveling I brought my little baby to see her great grandma this week in Boston. So I am in the affordable housing rental I grew up in. So the internet here is not as great. So I'm only able to share one window at a time. I can't share the entire screen. So please forgive me. I am now going to open the Excel file. All right. It's youtube.com/@Kent_HE. youtube.com/the KENT_HE. Share window. Boom. All right. So now I got the Excel file up. And what I wanted to show you was just how I translated those numbers into the Excel file. If you remember, what I did was we looked at how much money was the property owed. So the total debt, if you remember correctly, was $361,000. The entry fee was $30,000 plus closing costs plus transaction coordination costs. Okay. But the total debt was 261 grand, but that included $30,000 between $13,000 of lien 2 and $17,000 for lien 3. So those are debts that will be paid off by like 2050 because the homeowner assistance will technically wear off, and this is why they're selling on agreement for sale because they don't want to actually transfer the deed because they don't want to trigger that down payment assistance or homeowner assistance when it still has 4 years left because they don't want to call it due. After 4 years, it'll just kind of go off the books. So what I did here was I simply took $361,000 and I added $20,000 to the asking price. And then I also added $10,000 to the assignment fee because I'm assuming the wholesaler is going to want to make some money off of this. Now, I did 361 because that is truly the total amount of debt that I took on because technically those other debt, the other liens, they don't come off the books until way later. So I'm including that in my purchase price. But that's okay because at the end of the day, we just care more about the monthly payment right now. Okay. Then we want to go through and let's update the rehab calculator. So this property is how many square feet? It's 1,600 square feet. So I'm gonna assume I need to do paint and carpet on the entire house, and that's pretty much all the renovations I need. I'm gonna put in $1,500 for the roof just in case there's some issues or some patching that you might need. I'm gonna put in $500 to clean up the landscaping just in case there's any cleanup that's needed. I'm gonna put in $1,500 for interior painting. I usually have paid between $350 a square foot, $3 to $350. So I'm gonna put in $1,600 here. 1,600 square feet, not $1,600. I'm sorry, and 1,600. Actually, most of the home looks pretty solid. I think if someone's living there, I'm assuming it's in decent shape or decent rent ready. So I'm gonna do equal 1,600 divided by 2. So I'm assuming I'm going to replace half the flooring because if any of the carpet needs to kind of get replaced, I'm going to assume that I'm going to change it to LVP because I'd rather just get it over with in the first get-go. Now, as I go down and I keep underwriting this deal, I'm assuming the water heater is good because it's rent ready. I'm assuming there's no termite issues because people are living in there right now. Or if I find something, then typically something will be negotiated during closing, during the inspection period. So right now I'm at $17,000 to rehab this property right now. And let me make sure I double check my numbers, because remember yesterday I added extra $10,000, so it's always good to check your formulas. And right now I'm using $2,049 for my monthly income rent. And then right now I have my subto loan, which is on the top right here. That's $361,000 of debt. That it's going to make it equal to 4.75%. Oh, I'm sorry. This should be 340, because there's $20,000 of debt that doesn't have a payment. And then there is $30,000 of those liens that I'm putting into my second loan section, but I'm not doing anything with it. I'm putting it at 0% interest rate, 0 years, 0 payments per year, because that is just going to roll off at the end of the year. So I don't want that affecting my cash flow for this deal specifically. This is why you got to read the deal and just maneuver and update the numbers accordingly based on what you see. Okay. Now, as we go through the principal interest is 1778, but they told me, the wholesaler told me, that the PITI is 2173.80. So I went to the property tax section and I just typed in 2173.80, subtract the sub-2 loan principal, subtract the sub-2 loan interest from that first loan, and I'm able to kind of back into how much my property taxes are. And I'm just going to add in an extra $30 a month for a higher insurance premium, because I'm assuming the insurance policy will continue to go up, and also it's typically a little bit more expensive for an insurance policy on a rental property when you compare it to a primary residence home. So I'm just being a little conservative there. I'm setting aside 10% for my war chest for my maintenance. I'm setting aside another $50 for the HOA, and I'm setting aside 8% property management, and then 3% for vacancy. Okay. Now, all my entry fees are right here now. There's $20,000 cash to seller, right? There is $10,000 of sign fee that came from the $30,000 entry fee that I saw earlier. Now, there's still closing costs. So right now I have it at 2% closing costs, and I got my renovations reserve at 17%. This right now, at its current rate, is a negative $635. Negative $635. And that was assuming a $2,049 rent. And how do we get that, right? We got that from the market rent on affordablehousing.com, which we have noted all these numbers here, the FMR from the HUD website, and then the 4-bedroom rents here that we saw from the affordablehousing.com website. Now, using that cash on cash return, that doesn't work. I'm personally not going to buy a negative cash flow property. Now, can you look for other exit strategies? Yeah, you can look for MTR, which is a medium-term rental, and look for insurance stays, but that's not my strategy. So I'm only evaluating it from a long-term rental perspective for this deal specifically. Now, even if I went to 2445, which is the payment standards, right? I'm not even going to underwrite 3030, because the county has released their records of how much they're willing to pay for a rental, a 4-bedroom rental specifically, in their county. So I already know, and this is interesting, right? You don't see this too often from the standpoint of, you don't usually see that a county is the payment standard is less than FMR. Typically, you see it right at FMR, but maybe for some reason they think the HUD calculated way too high. So they're like, that's way too high. That's not commensurate to market rent. So that's what's 2445. And that's probably true, because when you looked at affordablehousing.com and you look at the market rent estimator, they said that the 4-bedroom market rent was $2,049. So this is hence why their payment standard is only 2445, and that's significantly lower than what the FMR is, because they know their own market and they recognize that if we paid $3,000 or $2,700 or $2,890, we would be overpaying market rent, and they don't want to do that. So I'm not even going to underwrite 2445, because, like I said earlier, if I'm only getting a $400 bump in rent to cover utilities, that's probably going to come out to a wash. But actually, it's going to, it's going to increase the chances of me losing money on a deal if I end up having a resident that is not responsible for utilities. And if you think about it, the tenant isn't really incentivized to look out for your utility usage, because they're not incentivized to tell you when there's active leak because they're not paying for the water bill. They're not incentivized to close the window whenever the AC is on, and that causes you more electricity. So just be really, really careful about deciding to cover utilities. You open up the floor, figuratively, of how much you can bleed in terms of monthly cash flow. So at 635, this is a negative 635 cash flow a month. This is not a deal at 2049. Even if you got the full market rent at 3030, and for some reason the county was going to go for it, this is still only a $139 cash flow. 3030, 139, and that would have been resulting in a 3.1% cash on cash return. That to me is still not ideal, because I'm typically looking for 15% or higher to make it worth a while, make it worth the risk, etc. So this is why it's not a deal for me. But it was kind of good today. Like, today's scenario was a little different because we saw the Maricopa County payment standards was actually lower than FMR. So this is why, hey, once you think something might be a deal or something might be too good to true, then that's where you decide to investigate a little bit further. The whole point of why we're doing this is, hey, is it close enough to a deal that it makes you want to take a next step? The faster you're able to determine your buy box, and the faster you're able to rule out deals, the less time you spend, the less you feel like you're burning out and looking at too many deals for no return on your time. So this is why we do this. Every day I've been underwriting a deal live. I hope you guys are able to copy what I'm doing, analyze the same deals that I'm looking at, put it on your own YouTube channel, and really create that undeniable truth that you are putting in the work every day. You're staying consistent, and naturally that will look really good for your investors, because, well, they're going to ask you, why do you think this is a deal? Well, then you can say, hey, please visit my YouTube channel. I can tell that this is not a deal because I looked at 100 deals and they were all not deals. So copy the same deals, same spreadsheet. DM me on Instagram if you want to copy the spreadsheet. I've been very fortunate to have been given these spreadsheets by other folks. I've been able to modify them to fit what I need and be flexible enough so that I can adjust them based off some of the terms and the deal nuances that are coming my way, and still make things work so that I can kind of comprehend the different scenarios that I'm looking at. So hope this is helpful. I do this because I don't have anything to sell you guys. I'm just simply trying to pay it forward, share with you what I know. I'm not claiming to be an expert in affordable housing. I'm just really passionate about it. So I can't thank you all enough for tuning in and listening to the podcast and supporting the YouTube channel, because without people like you guys, my mom would have never had the home I grew up in, and I would never become the person that I am today without folks like you that actually care and actually want to pay it forward. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. It's always good talking to all of you, and we will do this again tomorrow. Thank you so much, and have an amazing night, everybody.